Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with Emmett Muckles, Emmett and Friends. This is something that I go through all the time. You are a billionaire. Whether you want to believe it or not, you are. So I'll give you the concept. There was this woman who met this man, and they shared some information from an intimate encounter. 30 days after this little dance was blessed, you were over 1 billion cells because 2 to the power of 30 is 1 billion, and you hadn't hit the planet yet. I just have to let you know this because sometimes you freaking forget. Anyway, today we're going to get down to our chemistry in our body, which is made up of trillions of cells. My man, Udo Erasmus. How are you, sir?
I'm good, and I was following your math, so we are actually trillionaires.
2 to the power of 30?
No, trillionaires because there's 60 trillion cells in the body. They're all alive and they're all cooking.
Yeah, but you know, the whole point is to let people know about the very basics of you. You know, before you even got to the planet, you were already rich. And because when I throw that math at people, they look at me like, you know, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, that's right.
And you only grow from there. So, you know, your gut flora is a universe. It's, you know, it's the secondary mind. It's the feeling place, and just the bodies that weren't made from our bodies. The neighborhood that's there. There's trillions of cells there.
Oh yeah, there's another probably 100 times more, no, 10 times more microbes in our gut, which only weighs about a couple pounds.
Right.
Than there is in our body. So then now we're talking not 60 trillion, but 600 trillion. So now we're almost up to quadrillion, and nobody even knows how big that number is.
So, I mean, this is actually great because you're the first person I've actually dialogued with about this. One of the things that I talk about is the fact that human beings are fractal composition. And people say, Emmett, first of all, people say, you think way too much. I'm like, that's what I do. I was an only child. And I say, we're fractal because the further out you go and the further in you go, they begin to look very much the same. So when you get down to the cellular structure and how they interact with each other, when you get down to the molecular structure, and when you get down to the subatomic level, it starts to look like what you see in space. And I always relate it to the fact that we should really respect each other, because sacred doctrine always says, you know, love your neighbor as you love yourself. A lot of people have problems loving themselves first.
Well, we do love our neighbor like we love ourselves. If we don't love ourselves, we don't love our neighbor.
Right.
If I hate myself, I will love you the same way.
Right.
Because hating people comes from, you know, when I hate somebody, comes from inside of me. So it's my hate that I'm expressing. It's the hate in me that I'm expressing.
And where does it come from? You know, these we haven't even gotten into it.
Yeah. You want to know where it comes from? In my opinion, I mean, I know you have a story too, right?
Yeah, go for it.
But in my opinion, it comes from our disconnection from our foundation, and our foundation is perfect peace. That's the foundation of every human being. That's beyond the subatomic level. And perfect peace is also the foundation of the entire universe.
But why can't we as humans get to that level?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that level is already within us.
Yes.
But in order to experience it, you have to focus on it, right? And our awareness keeps going out through our senses into the world. That's part of the survival drive. That's that part natural for us. So we go out there, well, that piece is not out there. My access to the piece that that created the entire universe and the peace that created me as a human being, that peace, my access, I have to bring my awareness, my focus inside, back to the core of my being, in touch with internal awareness, or in touch with the peace that is that foundation. And if somebody says, well, I don't see peace, I say to people, hey, listen, peace has always been everywhere. And they say, well, I don't see it. Well, the reason why you don't see it is peace in you is not doing the looking. Maybe anger in you is doing the looking, and then you see danger or you see enemies. If fear in you is looking, then you'll see danger. And when you see danger, that colors your perception, but it also gets you to create in action a dangerous world, and a world full of enemies.
So
all of that exists within us. So we have a choice between anger and fear and skepticism and cynicism and all of that, and peace and unconditional love, because the energy that keeps us alive, life energy, has unconditionally, loves the body unconditionally, 24/7, 365, lifelong, never takes a day off, never goes on strike, never complains, never asks for anything back. And so if we want unconditional love, our model for unconditional love is our core being. And when we're in that, we change from being takers to becoming givers. Because when I feel like I have everything, and that's what it feels like to be fully present in my being, then all that's left to do is not, how do I take care of myself? Then all that's left to do is say, okay, what needs to be done? Where can I help? How can I help? What do I have talent for? And let me do what I can to make other people's lives as beautiful as mine is.
So it sounds like we haven't even gotten on topic yet. But
I think we're right on topic.
But with that, that reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you start off, you're just a little lizard, and you're like, okay, I got to make sure that my stem is controlling all these bodily functions, and then I get, okay, I'm safe. And then as we climb up that pyramid, that's when that self-actualization happens, which it seems to be, there's a force that is keeping us from that. And this is what I call the devil, where the incarnation of the devil comes from. It comes from that egoic character that resides in all of our energies that keep us at bay. For instance, right now, the United States has been pretty much divided for the last, quite a few years.
Yeah.
And I just sit back and look.
It's like, why is that?
I'm just like, what is wrong with you people? Well, I understand human beings have this thing of cult of personality. They're looking for someone to save them, us. And I'm like, well, I learned a long time ago. Like I said, I was an only child. You find out really quick who's there to save you, which is yourself. That's our job to come to this planet. We were these spiritual beings. We inhabited a physical body so that we could understand how to get back to the one, as James Brown would say, get on the one.
So can I talk about Maslow just a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. Maslow himself wasn't sure that the hierarchy was like, well, first you take one and then you start the other. And then when that's done, then you start the other. Maslow was wrong about that. Maslow himself had doubts about that hierarchy. And let me tell you why I say that. I was born in a war. So it's probably the worst kind of place you can be born in. We were fleeing from communist tanks and trucks, and the Allies were shooting at us. So it was crazy. And I was like, not quite 3. I don't remember much other than fear, anxiety, terror, hunger, being abandoned. So I went through a lot. But even when I was confused inside, my heart ached for something. And it wasn't just food. Even when I was hungry, my heart ached. These are coexisting needs. The body has needs and the heart has needs. And if you're poor, you can still be completely whole and completely content and completely in touch with the peace that is the core of your being, because the hunger for that is heartache. Now, we don't think of heartache that way, but when your heart aches, it's always because you lost something. And the reason why you get to heartache from so many different, grandma dies, the dog runs away, somebody lies to you, girlfriend dumps you, boyfriend dumps you, or you feel yearning, or you feel restless, or you feel uneasy, you feel like I got to do something. All of that, you feel it in the same place, all those different things. And it's a very intense thing, and we don't like it. So we try to distract ourselves. But when a distraction ends, we're pushed back to that place. And what that heartache actually is your heart calling your attention or your focus of attention to come back home inside to its source in life. So everybody is being called to come home when they're not, when they can't, when they have a moment of not being able to be distracted. And that's part of the human journey. Trees never trees never disconnect from themselves. So they never have to reconnect. Yeah. Dogs, they'll go out and they come back to themselves. We go out and then we get in our head. And then we live from memory and imagination, and memories of trauma and all of that kind of stuff. And so we're different that way. And only human beings of all the creatures on the planet need to make time to sit still, to let go, to breathe quietly, to be as still as they can be, to see how deeply still they can become, to see how long they can stay there, and to feel what it feels like in that stillness. And that's where they will find the peace.
I can tell you that because recently I reinitialized my yoga practice. Mm-hmm. I've been trying off and on for 10 years. Only recently, and when you just said this, I thought about the session I did today. There was nothing else on my mind. Mm-hmm.
That's right. And there's no devil there. The devil's in the mind. The mind is duality. It's 50% for you and 50% against you. That's the way the nature of the mind. But if the moment you step out of that, even into just feeling what your butt feels like sitting on your chair, or your feet on the ground, or your shoulders on the back of the chair. I'm doing it as I'm saying that. Or how your shirt feels on your arm. Or how your glasses feel on the tip of your nose, right? There's no thoughts there. Or the way the yogis do it, it's always follow your breathing. Breathe slowly.
And that was it.
And breathe lightly. Breathe lightly. When you do that, and if you really focus on that, you will not be aware of any thoughts. Your mind will still be doing what it does, but you don't have to be there. You don't have to pay attention to it. It's doing it anyway.
So I want to jump a little bit here.
Yeah.
So let's talk about fats.
Okay, let's talk about fats. I'm the fat man.
No, you're not physically fat, but you're the fat man.
No, but they call me the fat man.
What led you on this? I always ask this question.
Yeah.
To all my guests, because it sums up everything in a nutshell. Yeah. What got you to now with the writing of your books?
Well, what happened, I told you I was born in a war. So I was always trying to figure out how people could live in harmony. And, and I was looking, I wasn't interested in the disease. I wanted to know what health is. And so I studied biological sciences, and I have quite a good background in biochemistry and genetics and all that stuff. But I got married and we had 3 kids, and my marriage broke up, and I was really upset. In fact, I was so upset I wanted to kill something. So I took a job as a pesticide sprayer. This is really true.
Really?
Yeah, I took a job as a pesticide sprayer because when you spray pesticides, you get to kill things. And so I was spraying weed killers, and I was really careless because I was so mad. And I walked barefoot over the lawns I sprayed, and the skin peeled off the bottom of my feet. And at that point, I said, well, maybe I should wear rubber boots. So I wore it in rubber boots and a bathing suit because I'm a white guy and I always wanted to have dark skin. So I wanted to be out in the sun, right?
Right.
Crazy. It's so crazy. So I was literally doing this job in a bathing suit wearing rubber boots. One guy said to me, all you're missing is the black tie. So, and then what happened after 3 years of doing it very carelessly, I got poisoned by the pesticides I sprayed. So I went to the doctor and said, what do you have for pesticide poisoning? She said, nothing. So we get to spray this stuff everywhere by the millions of pounds, and we have no solution for anybody getting poisoned by them. Wow, talk about conscience. Talk about crazy. Talk about being crazy. So I realized, oh my God, my health is really my responsibility. I sort of knew that. It was like, oh my God, I'm on my own. Nobody can help me here. And so because I had the background, I started reading the literature about science, about health and nutrition, disease and nutrition. Why? Because the body's made out of food, water, and air. Water and air are pretty stable. So if you eat bad food, you will build a bad body. And if you raise your standard of food intake, and you do that consistently, then within 1 year, 98% of your body will have been rebuilt to a higher standard. That's
1 year.
1 year, 98%, because your tissue always turns over, right? I mean, water goes through your body too, 12 times your body weight every year you drink in water.
Oh, I believe, but to me, it's probably a little bit more than that.
Yeah, because you probably work out more than I do. Okay. But the lining of the inside of your digestive tract sheds every 4 to 6 days. Your liver renews itself anywhere from 6 weeks to 3 months. Your skin is always, if you go in the shower and then you rub your skin, if you haven't had a shower for a couple of days, you rub your skin and these little sausages come off. We called them sausages when we were kids.
Mine does that every day.
Yeah. Well, that's your body getting removed. And of course, from underneath it keeps getting replaced. Yep. And so your body is a major construction site. Every year, 98% of your body is removed and replaced. And you don't even notice until you think about it, that's going on. And the good news about that is that's why you can heal. Because the moment you change the standard, you change the outcome. And you can do 98% of it in a year.
All right, I have to interject here because at where you're going, that information is understood. But here, particularly in North America, United States, or industrialized nations, you would think that we have access to the most premium food there is because of our standard of living that we have.
And we do.
But most people find less expensive options.
And that's a choice.
And the choice. So what are the foods that are essential to repairing that temple of the body?
All of the essential nutrients are building blocks that life needs to make a body that works. And our part of it is not to build a body. Our part is just the choices we make here. So when you eat, and the best foods, fresh, whole, raw as much as possible, if it's not contaminated, organic, in season, locally grown, sun ripe, mostly plant-based. The research is very clear now. That's the direction you want to go in if you want a longer life and better health.
Now, I started reading the Gerson diet.
Gerson diet, yeah.
And the reason for that is I'm an African-American male. Well, at least that's the term that we're using today. And I remember being a very young guy, and I used to play basketball a lot, or I would be in the neighborhood. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. Mm-hmm. And you would see these really fit guys or people but they're limping, or one side of their body is done in, and they've had a stroke and they're very young. You know, they might be 28 to like maybe 40. And you're like, you're looking at the body looks like in tip-top shape. And you're like, how did this happen? And then I went to the doctor and they said, you have hypertension. And I started polling people around me, like I checked some friends of mine. Theirs is historically low. They were all Anglo. I start polling my friends of color, and a lot of them exhibited hypertension, high blood pressure. So I started doing stuff about it, you know, start experimenting, cut out the salt, the sodium.
Yeah, that's the obvious first thing to do.
And then
too much salt will give you high blood pressure.
Yeah, and then I started eating very natural. Only problem is I travel a lot. A lot of times trying to get good, natural, organic food on the road
is harder.
It's hard is not the word for it. It's more like it's there, but you have to spend hours just to try to find it. So what can people do to combat some of these things? Because we are at an epidemic of obesity.
Right. Okay, so first of all, the obesity comes from eating too much sugar and starch for most people, because that gets you some water retention, gets you a little bit of inflammation, and any carbs you don't eat, the body has to turn them into fat. And then you put on fat, and then this was invented at a time when we lived between feasts and famines. So when you could feast, you could eat more than you needed, get some fat for storage, and then when the famine hit, you could live off your fat. So it is a survival mechanism, very, very efficient mechanism, except these days we're not getting the famines in the Western world.
Yeah.
Right? So we get fat, and then we keep eating, and we don't get a famine that forces us not to eat. And so we have to be more conscious and more deliberate about it. Just like if you want to go back, want to go back from heartache to your peace, you have to do that deliberately. Going away from it will always be automatic. Going back will always have to be deliberate. And because we live in a time where we can have damaged oils from frying them, but also from the way they're damaged by the industry when they make them, we have to choose better fats. We have to choose whole foods. We have to choose more plant-based, choose more more organic. So we actually have to make deliberate choices, because we're living in a world that has everything in it, but at least half of it is garbage, right? And so then it has to be deliberate. So with oils, very simply, you need omega-3 and omega-6 essential fatty acids. They are very sensitive. They have to be treated with care. We throw them in the frying pan. We treat them with the least care of anything, and more health problems come from damaged oils than any other part of nutrition. That's got to change. So you need to get oils made with health in mind, and you need to not use them for frying. You add them to food after it comes off the heat. So that's one. Magnesium, and we're talking about blood pressure too, by the way.
Yeah.
Omega-3s are very good for relaxing arterial muscle tone. And guess what happens when you relax arterial muscle tone? Your blood pressure goes down. So you dump the excess salt. You need a little bit. We should have about 2 grams a day, and we're using on average 7. So if we all went down to 2 grams of salt a day, we would not become sodium deficient or chloride deficient.
But everything is salt and carb laden.
Yeah, but you know why? One of it is about taste, but the other one is about salt was used to preserve things in the days before refrigeration.
Yeah.
So they salted the fish, and they salted the meat, and they salted all kinds of stuff. Either they fermented them, which is a good thing to do, or they salted them, which is a little cheaper and easier to do because you don't have to wait for it to happen. And we got used to it. It's like a cultural habit, eating too much salt. At that time, it kept us from starving because we could keep food over the winter.
Yeah.
And now it's killing us. So because the way we live has changed, because our lifestyle has changed, our food habits need to be in line with our lifestyle. Because we used to work hard and had no machinery, eating carbs was not a problem. Because if you burn them, they're fine. If you don't burn them, they turn into fat and kill you. Now we're sedentary. Now if I had to come to where you are to do this interview, I would probably I could probably eat all the carbs I wanted. I'd have to do it as a marathon, like a cross-country marathon from Vancouver to close to Chicago, right?
Right.
But I'm not doing that. I'm just sitting on my butt. I'm probably going to burn calories, 3 calories in this whole time we're together. So what I have to do is I have to eat less, and I have to pay attention to that. It has to be deliberate. I have to be conscious.
What about hunger, though?
What about hunger?
You know, because I've gotten to this point, and my wife argues with me, and she says, dinner's ready, and I tell her, I'm not hungry.
Yeah.
I'll eat it when I'm hungry. She's like, well, we need to sit down and eat. I was like, you don't understand. I'm not hungry. I will, and invariably within like 45 minutes, that's when my hunger strikes up, because you smell the stuff, it kicks in your mind.
Yeah.
I haven't eaten for a couple hours. So I eat after everyone else, and she's pissed. But I found that when I eat when I'm hungry, I maintain my weight balance better.
Right.
My fat better.
And that's true. There's a couple of things. There's lots of places to go with that. But part of you not being hungry may be because your mind is on something else. So you're not paying attention to being hungry. And that's in her favor, right? Part of it that you get hungry when you smell the food, that's the reason why she has to prepare it ahead of time, right? Eating when you're hungry, though, is good. And so it maybe doesn't, so there's something you could do to get to recognizing that you're hungry faster than you do, because you're letting her do the cooking and make the smells and all of that, and you're using that to remind yourself that you're hungry.
Yeah, but I literally forget to eat.
Yeah. And that's a good way to lose weight. Right? Sure. So on the other hand, you're supposed to eat when you're hungry. So I would say this: if you practice being present in your own being, like fully present in all of your being more, you would notice when you're hungry more effectively without having to be triggered by her saying time to eat and the smells and all of that. So I think that might be helpful. But if you eat when you're hungry, that's a good thing. But the other one is, and this is the more important for weight management, is to know when to stop eating. Because most people, you're supposed to stop eating when your hunger is gone. And again, you've got to be present in your own in your own space to notice. But most people eat till the food is gone, or till their stomach hurts. And when your stomach hurts, you've eaten too much. And if you don't stop eating till all the food is gone, then you are likely to be overweight. So with that, everyone who's listening to you can check in with themselves.
Is that one of those leftover? Is that one of those leftover things from the Depression era? I know the Depression era was mainly focused, from my point of view, from the United States, but usually when that happens, it affects other parts of the world as well.
Well, no, it does. And the Depression was also in Europe. So this was not just a North American thing. But no, I wouldn't say it's about the Depression, because it's about not living consciously, because the Depression is over. You don't have to overeat because you think you're going to starve tomorrow. Right now, you don't have to do that.
That's true, but it's
but you may have a memory, but don't live by your memory. Your hunger is for now, not for your memory of the 1930s.
I'm not talking about memory. I'm talking about the influence of the generations prior, because I believe my mom and my aunts probably were born around that time. So their parents were there and experienced it. So they got that thing. You eat everything on your plate.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I grew up like that too.
And then it gets dropped down, and you're like, I don't want that.
So then, so then if you're not living by a memory of the Depression, because you never went through it, you're living by your aunt's memory of the depression, right? And my parents used to say, you eat everything on your plate, and that's how it is, and you don't get up off the table until all the food on your plate is gone. But in North America, the kids say, and then they would say, oh, people in India are starving. People in China are starving. And we didn't have that because we came out of the war. So we had really experienced that. We never had the presence of mind to say to our parents, well, if people in India aren't eating, why don't you just send the shit to India? Right? Because I don't want to eat it anymore, right? And then, we'd have tears and anger and temper tantrums around, you have to finish everything on your plate, right? And so there's the whole psychological thing or they love you and they want to feed you, and you associate eating and overeating because they encourage that with mother love. And again, now your mother isn't doing that anymore. If you're an adult, you need to be conscious, because you have a subconscious thing built into you that was created by the way you were parented, and lots of good things too. So I'm not trying to knock parenting. Parenting is a hell of a hard job because there are no perfect kids, just like there are no perfect parents, right? I thought for years my parents didn't love me, but they could have cooked and eaten me, and they didn't. They worked and they did what they did, and they did the best they could, right? So, but in order for me to be the kind of weight I want, I have to be conscious. I have to be deliberate. And we have so much that if we are not deliberate, we'll eat a lot of junk, we'll get a lot of bad diseases, we'll have terrible habits, our teeth will fall out, we'll live a miserable life. And the cure for that, to be fully present in all of your being, in your awareness, in your life energy, in your inspiration, which is a part of mind, in your body, in your survival smarts, which is the other part of mind, in your social surroundings, in your environment, and in terms of the big picture, that we are terminal, very tiny terminal bodies in an infinite universe. And to be present to all of that, then you live the life of a master.
So why do people call you the fats guy versus the oils guy?
Convenience and laziness, because I should have really been, but you know what? The fat man sounds more interesting than, but they did also call me the Omega Man.
Oh.
Yeah. And in the UK, they called me His Royal Oiliness.
My wife calls me that because it's my skin, though.
Yeah. No, his royal oiliness, oozing charm from every pore. He oiled his way around the floor. That's a line from My Fair Lady, the musical, right? So, yeah. And so, but it's because I was focused on oils and fats, and the book is called Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. It could have been called Oils That Heal, Oils That Kill. But, fats is kind of a collective term for the hard fats and the liquid fats. Only the liquid fats are often called oils. And in science, they call them lipids, and that includes everything, fats and oils.
This might sound very simplistic to you, but the body is, and I'm going to use a reference from Star Trek, back the original Star Trek. We are bags of mostly water.
Yeah.
And if you take an oil and you take water and you put them together and you shake and shake and shake and shake, they look like they're together, but then they separate. They say oil and water don't mix. So why would oil be good for the body when the body is mostly water?
Okay, so your body is about 70% water. It's about 15% fat or oil, fats and oils. It's about 10% protein. It's about 4% minerals. It's less than 1% vitamins, less than 1% oxygen, like free oxygen. But water is mostly oxygen. So your body is about 62% total oxygen. So why do they mix? There are ways to make them mix. All you have to do is find an emulsifier. An emulsifier is something that mixes oils and fats. And where do you see that? Well, you see it in they mix really well in bases. You can make oil. You can separate an oil fraction that's acidic and an oil fraction that's basic.
Yeah.
Oil will mix in the basic fraction. So if your body is more alkaline, then your oils will flow better in your whole system. And then your cell membranes are made of oils. They're called phospholipids, and there's 2 layers. And on the inside between them is fat, and on the outside is water soluble. So this is a molecule that's water soluble at one end and fat soluble at the other end. And you can do a ton of really interesting stuff when you put molecules together like that. And nature, life, the creator did that way back in when life began, because all cell membranes are made out of phospholipids, which are emulsifiers of water and oil. And
now you said something that's interesting.
And that's why we don't have, that's why we're not a bag of water from here down and a bag of fat from here up.
You said something about our pH level or alkaline levels.
Yeah.
A lot of people, there's a movement where people are starting to really pay attention to their pH level.
Yeah.
But the masses, I guarantee you, have no understanding. So if you don't know, where would you start to say, besides getting the little pee strips? And
yeah, that would work. Yeah. If you go on a, okay, if you eat a lot of animal foods, they're more acidic than plant foods. So if you eat more plant foods, you become a little more alkaline, although your blood alkalinity will always be in a very specific range, and different organs and different tissues have different pHs. But because we're acid producers, it's helpful to our health to bring in more alkaline stuff. That's always plants. You can get water like that, alkaline water. I have a Kangen machine that makes alkaline water for me.
A who machine?
It's called a Kangen machine, Kangen.
Kangen machine.
Yeah.
I got.
And it's a water. You put it on the water tap, and then you can make acid water that's good for your skin, because your skin is supposed to be a little bit acidic, and you can make alkaline water that's good to drink if it's 8.5, 8.5, 9, or 9.5. And then you can make 11.5 water that you can use to dissolve grease on your car or spots on your carpet, because it's slippery. That water is slippery. It's like a detergent, but there's no soap in it. It's just water. It's just a fraction of water. Water is like amazing stuff.
But one thing that I just recently came across is our water has been so cleansed that it's lost some of the properties, the public water that you drink. And what I learned this is when I was in Austria, because my father-in-law took me out and he was like, look at this water. We were off in the forest and it was coming out of the mountain. He's like, look at this water. And it was probably about 10-foot little pool there, but I could see to the bottom.
Yeah.
Like, this water is as pure as it gets. He was like, the stuff you get out the tap sucks.
Yeah. Well, because they put a bunch of stuff in it. But if you go in polluted places, the water is dirty. The mud goes to the bottom, but there's bacteria in it, and there's all kinds of impurities in it. I know in Flint, Michigan, they had iron in the water. That's why the water was orange. And some of them, they had lead pipes, so lead in the water. So there's lots of problems from us putting the water in pipes and bringing it into the city. And then because in those pipes, you would get bacteria growing, so they have to throw in some chlorine to kill the bacteria. That's not real good for you, but it's better than what you might get if you drank contaminated water. And then they put in some minerals because their mandate is the water is supposed to be completely neutral. That's the standard, I think, pretty much everywhere.
Is that pH neutral?
Michigan. pH neutral.
So what's that, about a 7?
It's 7. Yeah, pH neutral is 7, and they don't want it they don't